"James, you're a disgrace to this family. You're not wanted here." Those sharp words, filled with anger and disappointment, cut through the air. They came from my own father, spat out like venom in the middle of my brother Paul's wedding celebration. The sting of humiliation was unbearable, made even worse by Paul's silence. He said nothing, standing by as our father threw me out like I was nothing. Anger surged within me, and I was on the verge of storming out when something unexpected happened. Someone asked for help. A staff member at the wedding, overwhelmed by a sudden crisis, reached out to me, pleading for assistance. This unexpected moment shifted the course of the evening. I helped, and in doing so, something changed. For the first time in years, my father truly saw the person I had become, not the failure he always thought I was. It was a shock, not just to him but to me as well. My name is James, and I am one of 2 brothers in this family. Growing up, our father was a stern and demanding lawyer who always favored my brother Paul. Paul, the golden child, was everything my father wanted in a son: confident, successful, and seemingly flawless. As for me, I was always in Paul's shadow, never quite good enough. There was no time for play or leisure in our house. Every moment was dedicated to studying or lessons, and any joy I found was quickly crushed by my father's disapproval. Despite my relentless efforts to match Paul's achievements and win my father's approval, I constantly fell short. The final blow came when I failed the entrance exam for a prestigious school my father had his heart set on. The silence that followed from him was deafening. From that moment on, it felt as though I had disappeared in his eyes. His focus shifted entirely to Paul, leaving me behind, and even my mother's quiet support couldn't fill the growing emptiness. Determined to escape the suffocating environment at home, I made a difficult decision after high school. I left without saying a word to my father. I left only a note for my mother, telling her that I was going to make my own way. I found work at a hotel, where I could both live and earn a living. The hotel became my sanctuary, a place far removed from the expectations and judgments of my father. In the hustle and bustle of the guests and staff, I found a sense of freedom and fulfillment that I had never known at home. But the job wasn't easy. The hotel manager, Brian, was strict and demanding. Every mistake I made was met with sharp criticism, and as someone fresh out of high school, I made plenty of mistakes. "James, another error? How many times do I have to tell you?" he would say, pushing me to do better. But unlike my father's cutting remarks, Brian's feedback wasn't meant to tear me down. It was constructive, and when I earned his praise, it gave me a sense of pride and motivation that I had never experienced before. One moment in particular stands out: Los Angeles, the busiest time for the hotel. I had completed all my required training, and the pressure was at its peak. Everyone was rushing, tensions were high, but I was determined to prove myself. This was my chance to show that I was capable, not just to Brian, but to myself. In that moment, surrounded by the chaos of the hotel, I realized that I didn't need my father's approval to find value in myself. I had built something on my own, and that was worth more than any acknowledgement from him. This journey had been long and painful, but it led me to a place where I could finally see myself clearly, not as a failure, but as someone strong and capable. That year, I was entrusted to work independently for the first time, and it was more challenging than I could have imagined. The hotel was packed with guests, far more than usual, pushing our resources to their limits. The chaos of serving dinner, both in the bustling dining hall and through room service, reached an intense peak. Although I was still new to the job, I threw myself into the work, knowing that my inexperience might make things harder for the team. But I was determined to do my best. Then, on Los Angeles's day, just when things seemed manageable, a colleague fell ill. We were already short-staffed, so I knew I had to step up. I pushed myself beyond my normal hours, doing everything I could to keep things running smoothly. For a moment, it seemed like we had survived the worst of it until disaster struck. A pipe in the kitchen burst right in the middle of the dinner rush. The kitchen flooded, and with no plumber available on Los Angeles's day, the situation quickly spiraled out of control. The stress was visible on Brian, the hotel manager's face, as he tried to keep everything together. In a moment of desperation, I stepped forward. "Brian, can I try fixing the plumbing?" "I think I can do it," I offered. He looked at me with doubt, but we had no other options. After a brief hesitation, he nodded, giving me the go-ahead. What no one knew was that my time in a science-focused high school had given me a basic understanding of plumbing. With this knowledge, I set to work. Half an hour later, the kitchen was back in order. The flood was gone, and the pipe was fixed. I turned to Brian, breathless, and said, "I've managed to fix it." He rushed over and turned the faucet, his face filled with anticipation. When water flowed smoothly from the tap, the room erupted in smiles and applause. "Great job, James. You're my pride and joy," Brian said warmly. His praise filled me with a sense of accomplishment unlike anything I had experienced before. Growing up with Brian's guidance at the hotel had been life-changing. Together, we had tackled the challenges of that chaotic Los Angeles' day and come out victorious. The sense of fulfillment I felt that day stayed with me and shaped who I became. 20 years passed, and I found myself fully immersed in my role at the hotel, thriving in a career I had built from the ground up. Then, one day, a letter arrived from my mother, breaking the long silence between us. It brought news of my brother Paul's upcoming wedding. Although I had grown distant from both my father and Paul, my mother's heartfelt plea for me to attend tugged at my heartstrings. Reluctantly, I agreed to go. The wedding venue was a lavish hotel, a reflection of Paul and Dad's taste for luxury and extravagance. As I walked in, dressed in my old, reliable suit, I couldn't help but feel out of place. The guests were all members of high society, and their elegance and wealth were apparent in every detail. Paul's bride, a woman of flawless grace, seemed to be the perfect match for his world, perhaps even the result of one of Dad's strategic alliances. In the waiting room, I was surrounded by faces of power and privilege, but I felt like an outsider. I sat quietly on the sidelines, a silent observer, watching the world that I had left behind unfold in front of me. The people around me danced their intricate dance of influence and wealth, but I didn't fit into their rhythm. The life I had built for myself felt far removed from this world, and for a moment, I questioned whether I should have come at all. But as I sat there, unnoticed and unacknowledged, I realized something. I no longer needed to fit into their world or seek their approval. I had carved out a life of my own, far away from the expectations and judgments that had once weighed me down. I wasn't the boy chasing after my father's acceptance anymore. I was James, someone who had found his own path, and that was enough. I locked eyes with two familiar faces, and a sense of unease immediately washed over me. My father's expression was unmistakable pure disapproval. Dad and Paul approached, their presence looming like a shadow. "Why are you here?" Dad's voice was deep, commanding, and filled with an all-too-familiar contempt, stirring memories I'd tried to forget. "Is it so wrong to want to celebrate Paul's wedding?" I replied, trying to keep my tone light, forcing a smile. "Oh, and by the way, congrats, Paul." Paul gave a half-hearted nod, his face conflicted, torn between family loyalty and the tension that had always defined our relationship. Before he could respond, Dad cut in again, his voice sharp as a blade. "What have you been doing all these years?" "No doubt working some worthless job." His words sliced through the air, filled with disdain. "James, you shouldn't be here," Dad continued, his tone now dripping with contempt. Before I could respond, my mother rushed over, clearly desperate to ease the situation. "Come on, James is here to celebrate. No need to be so harsh," she pleaded, her voice shaky but full of hope. But her words were in vain. "Enough, Mom," Dad said, his voice booming with authority, silencing her. "James, let me make this very clear. You are a disgrace. I don't want you ruining Paul's celebration. Get out." Anger boiled inside me, fueled by years of neglect and rejection. I hadn't even wanted to come to this wedding, and now, here I was, humiliated in front of everyone. "Fine, I'm leaving," I declared, my voice steady with resolve as I turned to leave. Just as I was about to walk out, a voice stopped me in my tracks. A wedding staff member hurried over, urgency written all over their face. "Excuse me," they said, slightly out of breath, "we have a problem." An unexpected guest showed up, and we're short on seats and food. I turned back, seeing the tension in the room. Everyone was looking worried. Olivia, the wedding planner, the in-laws, and even my father. They were all scrambling for a solution. For a moment, I hesitated. Part of me wanted to walk out and leave them to their mess. After all, wasn't this the perfect opportunity to turn my back on the people who had turned their backs on me? But then, memories of the past began to surface. Despite everything, I remembered the times when Paul and I were kids. There were moments rare, but real when he would find time for me, when we would play together during study breaks, even when Dad's strict rules weighed on us both. Those memories softened my resolve, reminding me that, at least once upon a time, we were brothers, not just rivals. If I walked away now, I'd be no better than the man my father always accused me of being. With a sigh of determination, I turned back to the wedding staff. "Take me to Olivia," I said, my voice firmer now. The staff member's tense expression softened, relieved. I followed them back into the waiting room, reclaiming the space from which I had been so recently expelled. In the center of the room, Olivia, my father, and the bride's father stood with anxious faces, their concerns growing with every passing minute. As I approached, Olivia looked up, surprised but grateful to see me. "James, thank goodness. We really need help," she admitted, explaining the situation with the guest list and the seating arrangements. I took a deep breath, assessing the chaos. Despite everything that had happened, despite Dad's words and Paul's silence, I knew what I had to do. "All right, let's get to work," I said, stepping forward to take control of the situation. For the rest of the evening, I worked alongside Olivia and the other staff, making sure everything went smoothly. As the dinner unfolded without further issues, I couldn't help but notice the subtle glances from Dad and Paul. They didn't say a word, but their silence now felt different, almost as if, for once, they were seeing me in a new light. When the night finally came to an end, I stood at the edge of the reception, watching the happy couple share their first dance. I wasn't part of their world, but for the first time, I didn't feel like an outsider. I had proven to myself more than anyone else that I belonged, not because of their approval, but because I had forged my own way. As I quietly slipped away from the celebration, leaving before anyone could notice, I felt a sense of peace. This wasn't my world anymore, and that was okay. I had found my own place, and for me, that was enough. I approached, locking eyes with my father. His hostility was unmistakable, his demeanor stiff with anger. "Why has James returned?" he demanded, his tone sharp, almost cutting. Before the situation could spiral, Olivia, the wedding planner, quickly stepped in. "General Manager, please, we need your help," she pleaded, her voice filled with urgency. The title clearly caught my father off guard, and I could see the shock in his eyes as I calmly revealed my position. "I've been the general manager of this hotel chain for quite some time," I explained, my voice steady. "Since joining during the company's early days, we've expanded to several hotels and wedding venues across the country. In fact, this very hotel is under my supervision. I think I can handle this," I added confidently, dismissing Dad's looming protests with a wave of my hand. "Dad, I'm busy right now, we'll talk later." Without waiting for a response, I turned to Olivia, determined to get things back on track. "Relax, Olivia. Get the seating sorted, and I'll handle the food situation," I directed, watching the tension ease from her face. "Understood," she replied, her relief palpable. "I'll leave the food to you and take care of everything else." She hurried off to carry out the plan while I stepped out of the room, knowing all eyes were still on me. I headed straight to the kitchen, where my good friend, Chef Brandon, was busy with the day's preparations. "Hey you," I called out as I spotted him. "James, what brings you here?" he asked, curious. "I'm actually a guest today," I explained, shaking my head with a chuckle. "It's my brother's wedding, but we've run into a little problem, we're one meal short. Think you can help us out?" Brandon grinned. "Of course. I'll whip something up. Don't worry about it. Thanks so much. I owe you one, maybe dinner next time," I said, relieved. "Looking forward to it," he replied with a wink, already moving to prepare the missing meal. After tying up a few loose ends, I made my way back to the waiting room. Most of the guests had already moved to the ceremony area, leaving only my parents and the bride's family behind. I approached them and announced, "The issue is resolved, an extra meal is on its way." Relief washed over my mom's face, and the bride's parents smiled gratefully. Even my father, though still conflicted, seemed to be holding back his usual sharp criticism. His pride was clear. though his words were much softer this time. "James, thank you. Because of you, the celebration can go on without a hitch," he said, his gratitude genuine. "All in a day's work as a general manager," I replied with a small smile, feeling a quiet sense of victory as I led them to the ceremony hall. As the lights dimmed and the bride and groom made their grand entrance, I couldn't help but be captivated by their radiance. The ceremony unfolded smoothly, every detail falling into place as if the earlier chaos had never happened. When it was finally time for the meal, I made sure everything was in order, ensuring each guest was served without issue. Only then did I allow myself a quiet sigh of relief, knowing that the day had turned out well. After the ceremony, I found myself in warm conversations with both families. They expressed their heartfelt gratitude, especially the bride's family, who thanked me over and over for stepping in when things seemed to be falling apart. In that moment, as I shared smiles and gratitude with those around me, I remembered why I loved my job. It wasn't just about managing a hotel or overseeing events, it was about being able to make a difference when it mattered most. As they expressed their gratitude, I couldn't help but feel a warm glow in my heart. "James, thank you so much. We had the best day ever, all because of you," they said, their appreciation sincere and heartfelt. "No worries, I'm just glad I could help. Wishing you both all the happiness in the world," I replied with a smile, feeling proud of how the day had turned out. Turning to face my parents and Paul, I was greeted by my mom's beaming expression. "James, you did wonderfully." "Thank you," she praised, her voice full of pride. Paul stepped forward next. He was the first to apologize, his words genuine as he thanked me for stepping in. I couldn't help but smile. "As long as I could help, it's all good," I reassured him, my earlier resentment softening. Finally, I turned to my dad. He stayed silent, his emotions harder to read, but there was something in his eyes, a quiet acknowledgement. Though he said nothing, I could feel that, in his own way, he was grateful. There was a sense of closure in that moment, a realization that despite our differences, we could still find some common ground. Just then, my phone buzzed, signaling more work waiting for me at another hotel in the next town. I glanced at the message and sighed, not with frustration, but with a sense of purpose. Looks like I've got more work to do. But hey, I enjoy it, so no complaints, I said with a grin. "All right, I'm off. You two take care." As I left, I couldn't shake the feeling that this might be the last time I'd see Paul or Dad for a while, perhaps even for good. The thought lingered, but I didn't look back. I had work to do, and that's where I focused my attention. 5 days after Paul's wedding, I finally had a rare day off. Reclining on my sofa with a steaming cup of coffee, I was enjoying a moment of peace. That tranquility was soon interrupted by the chime of the doorbell. Curious about who it could be, I made my way to the door and was surprised to see Paul standing there. "Paul? What brings you here?" I asked, surprised by his unexpected visit. "Sorry, I got your address from Mom. I wanted to talk to you," Paul explained, his tone cautious. I welcomed him inside, not worrying too much about the state of my home. After all, it was just Paul. As I poured him a cup of coffee, he took a slow sip and commented, "Thank you, smells good." He tried to smile, but I could sense there was more on his mind. As we sat down to talk, Paul's demeanor shifted. His gaze became more intense, and I could tell he had something important to say. After a brief pause, he broke the silence. "I'm really sorry for everything," he said, his voice softer than I'd ever heard it. At first, I was taken aback. Paul rarely apologized for anything, and hearing him speak like this left me puzzled. "Hey, it's all right, Paul," I reassured him, trying to ease the tension. But it was clear he had more to say. Paul continued, opening up in a way I had never expected. "You might think I'm the older brother who has it all together, but the truth is I envy you, James." His words struck me like a bolt of lightning, completely catching me off guard. A heavy silence filled the room as his confession hung in the air. For a moment I was speechless. His admission shattered every preconceived notion I had about him. I always saw him as the golden child, the one who had everything I didn't. But here he was, sitting across from me, revealing a side of himself that I had never seen before. It was clear that beneath the surface, Paul had his own struggles. His vulnerability surprised me, leaving me unsure of how to respond at first. All I knew was that this was a turning point in our relationship, a moment that would redefine how I saw him and how we could move forward as brothers. In that moment, everything we'd been through, our rivalry, the distance between us, the unspoken tension seemed to fade away. We were just two brothers, finally understanding each other in a way we never had before. I never knew you felt that way, Paul, I admitted, feeling a bit guilty as I tried to process what he had just told me. That's the thing, it's not your fault, James, Paul reassured me, his weak smile showing how much emotion he was holding inside. At that moment, I felt a sense of understanding between us, bridging the gap that had been there for so long. Paul, I'm sorry I never realized you were struggling too, I confessed, feeling regret for not seeing it sooner. His smile, though faint, said more than words could. It's really not your fault, he repeated, his voice soft in the quiet room. We finally began talking about the things we'd never said before, and it made our bond stronger. I admire you for getting through things I can't even imagine, I told him honestly. But I also want to share my story with you. I could feel the weight of my words as I paused to gather my thoughts. Paul stayed quiet, listening closely, giving me the space to continue. Breaking away from our parents and becoming independent wasn't easy, I said. In the beginning it was really tough. As I spoke, I realized we both had faced our own battles. Yeah, we've both had our share of struggles, Paul agreed, his words sincere. He seemed like he had more to say, but I wasn't sure how to guide him or what advice to give. So, I just spoke from the heart. To be honest, Paul, I think you should do what you really want to do without worrying about Dad, I said, hoping it would help him find some clarity. Paul took in my words, and I could see a sense of relief wash over him. You're right, James. You've really helped clear my mind. Thank you, he said, his gratitude clear in his voice. No, thank you for coming over, I replied, meaning it. I walked him to the door, and before he left, he promised to come back for coffee soon. A month later, I received a letter from Paul. In it, he told me he had decided to leave his career as a lawyer to follow his true passion, glass craftsmanship. Even though Dad didn't approve, Paul found peace in his wife's support and new motivation in the path he had chosen. As I thought about Paul's journey and how our family had changed, I couldn't help but feel proud of the bond we had rebuilt. Lost in my thoughts, I was snapped back to reality by the sound of my phone alarm, signaling the start of another day in the job I had chosen and embraced.